Welcome back to today's Think event. This session will be with SVP of Sabre's Innovation Labs, Sundar Narasimhan. My name is Florian Mueller. I'm the Air Practice Lead for FCM Consulting, and today's session will be a little bit more focused around Sabre as the company, distribution, and also all the other products that are part of Sabre's portfolio. But we're also going to go a little bit left and right of those topics, and I think it's going to be very interesting for the audience. And with that being said, welcome, Sundar.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being with us today. And starting off maybe with the first question, the hot topics of our industry right now: sustainability, DEI, traveler wellness, personalization. What is Sabre working on, and what can you maybe share with the audience about those topics?
Sure. As you know, Sabre's platform really intends to be the platform at the center of travel. And our vision that animates our executives and the entire team at Sabre is to really create a new marketplace for personalized travel in the years ahead. And that's really the technology transformation journey that we're on. And what does personalized travel really mean? This morning, when I traveled here, for example, I like to travel with extra legroom seats. And when I go on vacation with my wife and my daughter, we have to take the extra bags that always they insist on packing. So knowing the often made choices that I make, I think that if the platform recognizes who I am and can configure the shopping experience, the pricing, et cetera, in a way that is personalized, I think not only can suppliers benefit because they can offer tailored products that differentiate their brands, but also the sellers, such as Flight Centre, and even the end consumer can benefit because they're getting the products that they need at the value, the price points that they're willing to pay. So that's really what you might call personalized travel. But you also raised another interesting topic, sustainability. Mm-hmm. And there, I think the world is going through tremendous change, and sustainability is at the top of everyone's mind. And it ranges from knowing the fuel spend on a particular route and knowing choices that you have. You know, maybe in some areas inside of an air trip, you can travel by train or travel by car. And those choices that you have, if they are highlighted in a shopping experience, that makes the sustainability goals, more apparent and achievable long term. So we're actually working, and we're quite excited, as you probably might have heard, a partnership with Google, where they're very excited to essentially collect this kind of information and present it in ways that make sense to the traveler so they can compare different options and choose the one that is aligned with their goals. And so overall, if you look at our product portfolio, whether it's be intended for airlines, hoteliers, or travel agencies, or ultimately the travel buyer, we're really putting in place these, what I would call raisins, that essentially allow you to differentiate those products that in a personalized way that makes sense to you and the suppliers can benefit from also.
Excellent. And I think we've seen already some of those come to fruition, and some more, I guess, will come down the line. NDC is one topic, right, that IATA and the industry have been working on for about 10 years. And some customers already take advantage of NDC, I guess the messaging standard and what results from that. And some others are waiting for it. And it's like, what is happening there? What do we see? NDC is capable of using some of those topics you just mentioned and being able to address those, right? Are there some use cases you can maybe talk a little bit more about?
Sure. NDC fundamentally is about creating the offer that goes into when a traveler is querying for what are the options to travel or to stay at a hotel even. The ability to look at the vast number of choices. And we typically think of NDC in two sort of parts. One is on the distribution side where offers are coming from multiple suppliers. Mm-hmm. And the other coupled to that is where what we call the airline side of NDC, where it's really creating that offer using all the personalization I spoke to. So the idea is, in the old days, these offers were generated by the middleman, and now in effect, every airline can in effect get those queries and tailor how the product should be composed, which is not just the base product, which is the right to fly or a right to stay at a hotel room, but the ancillaries that they can bundle along with it, that extra legroom seat, that free bag, et cetera, that are tailored to that particular traveler or the seller that is asking that question. So we're investing very heavily in NDC. We continue to work with our partners, both on the airline side and on the agency side, in order to provide access this differentiated content and display that in the appropriate points of sale channels where these offers can be best displayed, in order to, in effect, accomplish two goals. One, to, in effect, enhance conversions so that the right offer is presented at the right price at the right time to the right buyer. But the other important thing is also to provide the intelligence to the suppliers in order to help them price the products appropriately so that they can essentially get the yield that they're looking for at the end of the day. So we really looking at this problem end to end, and it's an industry standard, but we're working very closely with partners in order to provide technology and tools on both sides of the equation.
And I think this year is a big year for NDC adoption as well, right? For Sabre, there's throughout the world, I guess you guys are getting to be able to sell more NDC content and therefore for our customers and
That's right.
be able to consume more of that.
Yeah, in fact, it's an ongoing program. It's been a commitment from the senior levels for the past several years, and we'll continue to invest with our partners, both on the airline side and on the agency side, in order to provide these differentiated content at our points of sale and in effect help them achieve their business goals.
So similarly, I guess with NDC, and another technology that is in the news a lot is blockchain, right? There's different ways to use blockchain.
Correct.
And I mean, everyone probably has heard about Bitcoin. Hopefully you invested early enough in it, but apart from that, smart contracting comes up a lot. So
yes.
What can you share with the audience about blockchain and what
Sure.
you guys are working on?
Yeah, fundamentally, blockchain is what's called a distributed ledger technology. And people who've built Bitcoin and the currencies on top of it, we actually think it's exciting from both sides. And to just give you a flavor of how the distributed ledger itself can be used, there's identity aspect of it where each person can have their own personalized wallet in which you can store not just Bitcoin, the cash part of it, but also we all store our boarding passes in our phones. And it's just one step removed from it to store other aspects of the trip in a sort of a very authenticated, self-identified way. That's the identity part. The second part of it is the thing that you touched on, which is the smart contracts. And there, if you look at the way settlement works in terms of recording, financial transactions associated with travel is a pretty complicated business with multiple players involved, and doing that via smart contracts is another area that we've had some prototypes and MVPs, experiments, I would say. The third part, which is really the cash part of it, we're not that, I wouldn't say we have been exploring as much, not because it's not relevant, but we believe that its connection to fiat currency and how real money gets translated has still a ways to go. However, I know this. We had a hackathon where NFTs, which is sort of the even more further out than Bitcoin, are being used to sell hotel rooms, for example. And so I think that is very what I would call early stages. And so we're sort of what I would say exploring this kind of technology. And in the future, when there's enough enthusiasm and when real inventory gets attached to such technology, I think the uptake will be greater.
Okay. Now you mentioned the currency part is not necessarily the main part how you're going to use blockchain, but can we talk quickly about payment? I mean, it's very
Sure.
big, important topic for our audience.
Absolutely.
So what do you see there is going to come down the
Yeah,
pipe?
one of the very important aspects of payments that especially relevant to Flight Centre and agency customers is virtual credit cards, virtual cards.
Yeah.
And as you know, Sabre has a pretty robust product in that area, and the uptake of it, and even during COVID, when travel was going down in the past couple of years, that product has actually continued to grow. And so the use of virtual credit cards and also the new technology, the Fintech type products, where you can essentially limit how those forms of payment are being used for, say, vouchers or for hotels or for other, one-time use type of credit cards. That kind of use cases is something that we see increasing adoption in. And then speaking of Fintech type use cases, there are insurance. There's some of our customers like Hopper, for example, have innovated in, cancellation fees. I will pay extra as long as I don't have to pay a refund or exchange fee. So those kinds of products are also associated with payments, and people are innovating on that front as well. So we're pretty bullish on the payment space because it's sort of in addition to, over and above what folks can actually think of in terms of travel selling. It's an area that we increasingly are looking very closely and sort of increasing our investments in, and look forward to actually releasing more products in the coming months and years.
Yeah. No, and I think when you look at how the industry is being invested in and funded, I think fintech is a very big part right now, right?
And absolutely. In fact, the biggest one, I guess, last year was buy now, pay later. Mm-hmm. Products like Affirm. There's several startups, upstart, companies that have gone at that specific niche, because travel, if you look at the statistics of it, is the third largest after your home and your auto payments. Mm-hmm. The annual spend on leisure travel is a pretty significant amount for a family of four. And so given that, these large purchases can actually be paid in an installment basis, it's those kinds of innovations, if we facilitate through the origination and selling channels, we believe that there's a significant opportunity there.
For sure, yeah, and I think even some airlines come out now with fly now, buy later, pay later, right?
Exactly.
And that's across the world.
Across the e-commerce spectrum.
And I think interesting, particularly for the corporate clients as well, right?
Absolutely.
You mentioned NFTs, I think, before, right? Which I think is interesting. Maybe that is a nice segue to go into the Metaverse a little bit. So
sure.
What do you see on that side?
Yeah, Metaverse, in fact, when I joined Sabre 3 years ago, mm-hmm. that was one of the, what I would call hot topics even then, because the Oculus, the other VR goggles, Google Glass, you may have remembered that. Mm-hmm. Those kind of what I would call not just virtual reality, but alternate reality was very much on the uptake. We actually did not invest as much in the what I would call the VR AR space, but post-COVID, given how meetings have evolved and how people nowadays don't think that much of going into Zoom calls or work from anywhere. So that kind of technology is coming, I think, and a lot of companies, not just Sabre, but technology providers are investing in the hardware, investing in the network and the kinds of infrastructure needed in order to make the user experience much better. So I think meetings and how meetings will evolve will certainly be sort of what I would call the first stage of evolution that we foresee. The other side of the story is what I would really think of as travel selling. There are 360-degree cameras, alternate reality, where you're wearing a glass and you can put yourself in a sort of a travel situation, YouTube videos that show you how a potential leisure vacation might look like. And more importantly, one of the interesting projects that I was actually marginally involved with is something called Inner Space, where, if you're familiar with Street View in Google, where you see, in a map what an actual street view looks like, and then you look at a hotel, why not go into a hotel and see how the interior of a room might be experienced, and actually see whether the room that you bought actually has that ocean view or not by looking out the window. It's that kind of experience, not only in hotels, but also in air. Just like Sabre Labs, Singapore Airlines has a labs-like organization. And there they were exploring how to create their next first-class cabin. And in order to do that, rather than actually building the cabins, they created a virtual reality experience whereby the designers could prototype different lay-flat beds, the trace situations. If you all seen that kind of cabin experience, how can you actually experience that at low cost prototyping type of facility? So I think the use cases for VR, the Metaverse, even though people are focusing on the social aspects of it. I think there are these other, what I would call maybe lower hanging fruits, better meetings, better exchanges, and even maybe prototyping of how travel experiences might be in order to facilitate that selling, facilitate the e-commerce aspect of it. I think those will, be very prevalent a few years from now.
Oh, it's very interesting. And I think you talk about the hotel, right? And maybe it's a good moment to talk a little bit more about hotel technology.
Sure.
You mentioned before NDC, there's a lot of stuff happening of how to improve the overall shopping experience, the travel experience. What is happening on the hotel side also when it comes to distribution and some of those topics?
Yeah, absolutely. Sabre is actually investing, as you probably know, quite a bit, not just in air and in hotels, but also other travel-related products on our platform. Our goal really is to be the travel provider, the platform provider for all such content. But speaking particularly about hotels, we've had a lodging and content services program for a couple of years now, where we've really incorporated content not just from the traditional GDS hoteliers and people who would participate in that type of program, but from travel sellers, from hoteliers around the world. And even OTAs such as Booking and Expedia's content is now available through our platform. That is sort of the main area of focus in terms of enhancing the content and making it available to our sellers and to the ultimate consumers. There are now interesting offshoots of it, which is alternative lodging, which is everybody knows about Airbnb and VRBO. That type of content is coming. And what we are quite excited by is just like NDC, which focused on sort of the offer generation piece. It's about the bundling aspect of it, because as you probably know, most people when they travel buy air, but they also buy hotel, and they probably are taking ground transportation and maybe even dining. So the ability to package what we are calling bundling together, Bundle IQ is our product in this space, at intelligent price points that are personalized, back to that earlier theme, in a way that for corporate customers, for example, if you have negotiated contracts with particular hotel providers or with airlines, creating those bundles at appropriate price points, being able to not only display and sell them, but to do that in a way that optimizes productivity for the agent who's doing the selling. So automation, being productive in those sales is another important focus for our Sabre platform. So we're investing in hotels, not just for hotel content alone, but to how to combine it with those ancillaries that hotels sell along with air and the ancillaries that they sell, and provide the overall end-to-end traveler experience.
Right, which is, again, one of the hard items, right? To make sure that travelers are having an experience even on the corporate side, similarly to what they have on the leisure side, and it all ties into the corporate processes. Now we talked about air, we talked about hotel. Maybe it's time to talk a little bit also about the car side.
Yep.
And there maybe also taking a little bit spin towards electric vehicles, maybe looking at electric vertical takeoff and landing, which is probably a little bit more short haul also than long haul. And is that something you guys are able to distribute? And what are you seeing in that space?
Yeah, so I think that, then this goes back to your earlier comment about sustainability. I think the predominant aspect of energy consumption and reduction or changes of how we approach climate change and sustainability in the long term is going to be a sort of a focused effort around electric vehicles and maybe not the EVTOL type Joby and Lilium. I've actually seen some pretty exciting traveler focused type of efforts. Sabre, we're not really hardware builders, and we're not building electric cars. We tend to think of it as it's content at the end of the day.
Right.
And our platform, when we say is content agnostic, that's really what we mean, in that we intend, like lodging and content services that I spoke about hotels, is really an API that allows multiple suppliers to integrate their content into the platform. And similarly, once it's integrated into the platform, sellers can come in, and again, via our APIs, we expose that content, that ability to combine, price, and compare, and really what we tend to think of is we're still sort of sitting in the middle. And as long as we are open and agnostic to allow different types of content to come into the platform and provide the intelligence, the caching technology, the shopping technology, the pricing technology that you actually need in order to combine and present this in an intelligent way to the end traveler or to a seller, I think we're doing, essentially what people expect of the platform.
Now, let's go down, like in terms of timing, years down the road, right? Space travel. And I know it's already happening for chosen few.
Yeah.
But long term, there are some interesting visions out there that humans may relocate, or at least there's going to be more than just space tourism eventually, or even to have space tourism, you need to build space hotels. All these, let's say, futuristic things. You think you guys are going to be able and willing and interested in this space and distributing?
Well, you're talking about space travel, which is hundreds, if not millions of dollars per flight. But even below that is, there's net jets and other, what you might call, chartered flights. One of the interesting things that are related to that is actually cargo. Mm-hmm. We don't think of cargo as something typically when we think about passenger travel, but in COVID, a lot of airlines were actually using their cargo space to do cargo. So I think in all of these areas, the main thing is, if you, rather than hundreds or thousands, you're going into tens of thousands to millions of dollars worth of, and the inventory is obviously much smaller. You can do that in a spreadsheet as opposed to a cross-shopping, compute. We use thousands of servers, for example, in order to satisfy the queries for normal air travel queries, because there's so many providers and you need to make intelligent comparisons amongst them. So I think actually space travel, when it comes, will be easy for us. Mm-hmm. Because the inventory is smaller, the prices are higher, and the shopping is probably not going to be in the high volumes that we're already accustomed to. Yeah. So I think, as I said earlier, it's all content at the end of the day, and integrating it into the platform is sort of what we're about, and providing the layers of intelligent capabilities that are providing personalized travel on the consumer and the seller side, but also doing it in a way that allows the suppliers to benefit from it, so they see the attractiveness of the platform to participate in it, is really what animates Sabre's overall product portfolio. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think even prior to joining Sabre, you've had some very interesting roles and worked with different organizations, and I think you've worked a lot about the future and how things for travel can be improved, and now also coming back to Sabre, like what do you see for the future to come for the industry?
That's a very good question about the future. And I often like to think about, we all envision different futures, and what is our sort of batting average? And that of the 10 ideas that you might have, how many of them actually get realized? And I'd say I probably actually am batting 200 or 300 to tell you the truth. I actually worked on the very early prototypes for check-in kiosks. And I don't know how many of you remember those days when there were no kiosks and you had these little, paper tickets, and you had to go up to the counter and they would be like typing. It took you 40 minutes to, check in 2 bags for international travel. And nowadays it's all automated and, straight through. The other interesting, I was associated with the company called ITA Software, which is, got acquired by Google before I came to Sabre. And there, the animating vision, and in 98, around that time, was to enable shopping over the internet. And if you think about that, nowadays we take it for granted that you go to airline websites or OTA websites and buy your travel. That wasn't commonly accepted because pricing and shopping of airline tickets was not available on the internet, right? And then at Google, Google, I don't know how many of you use Google Flights or Google Hotels, right? Hotels, shopping along with a map. Most hotel websites don't actually, often you want to stay at a hotel close to your meeting, but they don't have maps displaying, so that you can choose the appropriate hotel. And so that small sort of thought became a pretty interesting way to change the user experience for shopping for hotels. And similarly, I could go on and on about, say, how do people buy cruises, for example, or how do people buy even, Uber? And you may have heard the announcement that Uber is thinking about flights. So I think this kind of, if you think about what is coming in the future, I think especially now with COVID, it's not really clear what you need to have before you begin your travel, in terms of vaccination certificates, et cetera, et cetera. Making that kind of content available, easy, could be a great sort of thing so that you don't have to think about it. The other thing that I've always been sort of maybe personal frustration, which I think we're working on and we'll hopefully see solved, before in a few years, if not a couple of decades, is travel is a sort of a confirmation business, right? In that you buy your ticket, but then you have to, and they ask, who are you again? And then you go to security, who are you again? And then you go to boarding, who are you again? And when you go to check in at the hotel, who are you again, right? Computers should know that. And once you buy the ticket, and with biometric identification, there are ways today you can recognize who you are. And then you can just walk into the plane and take a seat and similarly check into a hotel. So those kind of friction-free sort of experiences, I think, is one thing. The other thing I'm personally also frustrated by, and this may be even more near term, is after all the innovation in internet and all the innovation that we put in our platform, to buy a normal travel that has air and a hotel, you can't buy that together, right? I call these the impossible trips, right? And then you have to go to hotel websites and talk to agencies, and even a travel agent's user experience, they don't make it easy to buy that together, price it together, right? And I was commenting recently about, post-COVID, or even my daughter after she graduated, she wants to collect her friends and go to Disney World. That's a multi-person trip. After COVID, I want to get together with my family at a lake house, and I can type lake house, but to buy the tickets plus the lake house, that's not easy. And so if you think about travel, which is a quintessential human experience, we as technology and platform providers don't make it easy. And I think if we invest in the right kinds of technology and tools in order to make the user's experience easy and friction-free, I think we can all look forward to a world where we ultimately connect to the people and the places we love. That's what travel is. And I think the reason that I'm excited to be at Sabre really is it gives me the opportunity to work at the platform, at the middle of it all, and actually allow for the creation of such technologies for the future.
Amazing. And really, I have to say, as much as you guys try to solve some of these problems, luckily at the travel agency, we still have the humans to be able to help you when the technology can't yet solve those problems.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, on that front, let me say this interesting thing. One of the interesting technologies we're exploring are call center artificial intelligence. And the idea there is, people still are typing. The agent is still typing at the computer. Whereas voice recognition, the ability to integrate phone with multimodal is now very prevalent. And I believe by integrating call center AI so that people recognize the voice, recognize who you are, and state in English what you really want, much like I told you the trips that I want. If the computer can recognize it and help the agent phrase the appropriate interactions, not only are we giving the offers that make sense to the user, but makes the agent much more productive. So they don't have to type 30 commands before they can arrive at a solution. They can do it in 5 or maybe 3 with some voice. That's the future, I think, which we should really be envisioning and shooting towards.
Right. And what's interesting is a lot of these things have been already in the movies for years.
That's
right?
it.
I mean, I just watched Her. I don't know if you know that movie with Joaquin Phoenix, and he doesn't type at all. He just speaks. And anyway, that's an interesting.
Well, the Star Trek Communicator is sort of the one that.
Correct. Yeah.
Because in travel, the other important use case. I mean, we talked about how to make an agent interaction efficient, but if you travel to places where the language, like I grew up in India, where I would say, if you just all you need to do is take a bus trip and go to the next state, and the people are all speaking a different language. And I wish I had products like Google Lens and Google Translate, which as you speak, it kind of translates into the other person's language, so you can actually have a conversation because travel is about connecting with people.
Well, isn't it the Babelfish idea, right?
Yes, the Babelfish idea.
All this Hollywood promotion we're doing here, but
it's coming closer and closer.
Yes, I think we're getting there. And anyway, I think it's a fascinating, futuristic world I think we're seeing in travel. I think we have already solved some of the problems. Most people don't use kiosks anymore, right?
Right.
Sometimes maybe to get your bag.
Touchless travel.
Exactly, it's all touchless. And I think there were some innovations, thankfully, if you will, based on COVID, and some of those things probably will stay on.
Yeah.
And
I think COVID has certainly been a 9/11 type of impact, and I think it. But we at Sabre are very bullish on travel will come back. It's a quintessential human experience. So when it comes back, I think there's a lot of pent-up demand, which we're already seeing in our statistics, even as 2022 has progressed, and we only anticipate that it will continue through as we as a human race learn to deal with COVID and other sort of variants as they come about. So we're very bullish on travel, and that's really why we're investing in our technology transformation and investing in these kinds of personalized travel technologies that we think really we need to skate where the puck is going. And this is what the consumers, the travel sellers, et cetera, will need in the year when travel comes back. And so that's really the future we are sort of building towards.
Yeah, and I think to use some of these statistics, right, I think we're at 70% of 2019 levels on the corporate side in the US. In terms of capacity, no matter which continent you look at, everyone is between 85 to 95% in the second quarter. Yeah. So I think it's fair to say travel is back, even though maybe back shouldn't be defined as 100%. I think anything above 80.
It's uneven in geography and in terms of leisure versus business, in terms of air versus hotel. There's a mix, but you're right in that as COVID vaccines, if COVID subsides, vaccines provide increasing levels of protection. I think that is really what the statistics kind of show. And the pent-up demand is where people want, they've all been cooped up. And I think, once that is unleashed, in fact, I was looking for, over the summer, for my next vacation. Prices are through the roof and everything is booked. So we were kind of late to the party. So I think that is evidence of what you're just saying.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think to quote you said travel is about bringing people together, right? And hopefully that will, after the pandemic, be able for everyone again, no matter if you have been able to travel throughout the pandemic. Hopefully the world is open again for everyone. And exactly. Thank you for everything that you do with your team and everything that you do at Sabre. And thank you for joining us today, and thanks to the audience for listening in.
Thank you, Florian. Thank you for having me here, and it was a pleasure talking with you about a few things that we do at Sabre.
Thank you.